Go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Hi, Professor. We love to be able to interview today, and we'd like to know how do you get into this sound editing in the first place? Are you born here, and how do you get into this incredible, fascinating sector of Hollywood movie?
Well, I'm a native Californian. I was born in Vallejo, California, which is up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My mother was first generation here. She was born here. But my dad came from China. So I guess you might say that I'm second generation or 1.5 generations because of the split that way. It was always my desire to actually get into some kind of photography as a cameraman. Because at the end of the war, there was an architectural boom here in the States, and I wanted to do architectural photography because it was very interesting. So I served some time in the Marine Corps, and when I came out, I enrolled at the Art Center School of Design, and they had an excellent photography course. And when we were actually in that course, somebody came into the room and said, "Who here would like to do movies?" I raised my hand with a fellow classmate of mine, and that's how I got into the motion picture business. And I worked for a small independent company to start with, and then when that company was unionized, they said that you could either go into editing or you could either go into camera. And I said I would like to go into editing, because camera at that time, if you're going to be shooting on the set, you were tied up all day. There's no way you can get out. And so that was the path that I took. I went into editing.
So it's very practical decisions.
Right. It wasn't actually spearheaded by the fact that, oh, I wanted to get into editing, I wanted to get into sound. It was just following the path of life as things happen.
Mm-hmm. How do you actually get into the first movie that you actually do the editing?
Well, when I came out of school, I had a job waiting with this small company, Mercury International. They did television commercials, and they did what we called industrial films, for industry factories and things like that at the time. And that was my beginning.
So how do you get eventually to the vice president of Disney?
Oh, that was a long trip.
Yes.
Because once I started editing, I found out that because of the guild, that's the union restrictions when you first get in the union, you could not edit film unless you were a member for 8 years. But I could get into what they called sound editing, music editing, so I took that. And that brought me into the sound field. And I just worked as an independent, that means not for a major studio, and then I became head of the sound department at 20th Century Fox, and everything was just going very well as far as my career was concerned. And I met some very influential people and who admired my work and thought I was doing a good job. And then I was invited to go to Disney. And then when I was at Disney for about 6 months, they asked if I would like to take over the post-production department, which is a step above editing. And I said yes, and then when I became post-production supervisor, they said, we're going to make you a vice president, and that's what happened. I was actually in that position for 3 years before I left.
Mm-hmm. So you make it so easy, but what is from your viewpoint, what distinguishes you with all the other sound editors that I suppose, who is the most influential, famous person that lifted you up from the rest of the...
Actually, I had quite a bit of support from everybody I work with, including directors. And there was a gentleman named Gordon Sawyer, who was the head of the Samuel Goldwyn Sound Department, saw some potential in me, and he was the one that sort of adopted me and trusted me to do a lot of major films at the time when I was pretty young in my career. And that's how I started. But I think the it's such a small industry.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I started, and it remains a small industry now, that you really can't close any doors behind you. By that I mean you can't alienate anyone, you can't walk off a job, you always have to deliver, and I think that's probably what helped me along, that I was able to do good work and I was able to deliver, and was always in the Chinese way. They call it inscrutable, and not raising any fuss or bother, and just did the job, and I was recognized for that.
So you do as good a job as possible because of your hard working. Say you have to deliver tomorrow at 8 o'clock, you actually deliver.
Oh, actually, right.
Yeah. So you
deadlines were, right now, deadlines is our worst enemy in any kind of motion picture business or television. I think the one thing, I really have to be fair though, my original name was Ho.
Yes, I understand that.
And I think that if I had kept that name,
yes.
And the reason I became Hall is because the nurse at the hospital where I was born, not really at the hospital, I was born in the home, but the nurse that filled in the birth certificate heard Ho as Hall.
Uh-huh.
And so that anglicized my name. I mean, it wasn't a Chinese name to begin with. I think that really probably did have a lot to do with my career.
That's great, because I thought you deliberately changed the name to Ho to Hall in order to fit into the Hollywood, because image is everything, right, in Hollywood.
That's right. Yeah. No, I didn't do that, and I have to admit to myself that probably if I had kept the name Ho, things may have been different, but I'm not quite sure, because at the time that I came into the business, there were only 2 or 3 of us.
Oh.
There was only one cameraman, and there was only maybe just one editor, one sound editor like myself, and one assistant editor.
So you don't see any discrimination or any kind, because there's so few of you. You can distinguish yourself easily on your skill and persistence. And
well, I would like to think that, but I think probably all of us, we come across some kind of prejudice. One time or another, whether it's your race or whether it's the way you look or whether you're male or, it's, but I think from a racial standpoint, probably. And I was often told that, oh, you're Chinese because you don't look Chinese.
Yes. So how do you view your vice presidency in Walt Disney? Is it you like to do it, or somehow it doesn't fit your personality, so you leave, or how does it?
Oh no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity because it allowed me to do things that, I was doing post-production work already in television at that time, on a few television series.
Explain to us, besides sound editing, what does post-production involve?
Well, post-production is like an executive position. The post-production supervisor oversees and executes everything to completion of the film after it's shot. So that has to do with editing, it has to do with mixing of the film.
Yes.
It has to do with the releasing of the film and all the lab work and the hiring of the people to do all that.
Okay, so it's a lot of personnel too, not just technical things.
That's correct.
Now, when you edit, we always know Hollywood do many takes, okay? In China or Hong Kong, you do 2 or 3 takes, that's a lot. Here you sometimes do 9 takes. Is it the skill come from taking a bit from each take and combine it so it runs smoothly and get the best of each take, or how is this? I'm just fascinated about what you do in...
Well, what happens is, since I worked in sound as a sound editor, the film editor is the one that assembles and edits the film. He cuts the picture. And he may or may not be careful with the soundtracks that he chooses to do it with. It's our job as a sound editor to go back and pick out the best sound takes, the best readings, and intercut those so that they have a flow to it and a meaning, a more dramatic meaning than maybe just what the original track that was cut in.
So suppose when you do one cut, the look is very good, but the sound is not very good, you can get another cut from the sound, but make sure that the lip
that's right.
synchronized with the
right.
sound. Is that where the trick is, the artistic? I'm just looking for the artistic element and the cleverness of this soundtrack tracking.
Well, it's both artistic and technical, because if you find a reading that has to be replaced or a reading that can improve the performance of an actor, then you just try that against the picture to begin with, and if it needs editing to make it in sync so that the person's mouth is moving at the same time as the voice that you hear, then that is what we call the sound editing or the dialogue editing, or putting it in sync.
Do you sometimes, because none of it is good enough, you ask them to say it again without acting?
Well, yes, we have a system that we call ADR right now. That's what it's called. It's called automatic dialogue replacement. It's when a soundtrack is unusable because, say, it was shot on location at an airport and it was noisy. Then you bring the actor back into the studio and you rehearse with your actor, and then you replace the dialogue. You record replacement dialogue, and it has to be edited to fit the picture.
So that gives the actors pretty great constraint, right? They have to somehow remember the emotion and the timing and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Usually the director is there to direct the actor, and they try to always improve the performance, but it's very difficult to do it when you're doing it in the studio.
Now, another thing that I understand technologically it's developing rapidly, the sound part, okay, MP3 and whatever, in the MP4 and whatever in the pipe stream. Now I understand you can take away the background noise, right? Just artificially take it away from because the technology allows. Is that part of the technology?
Technology actually allows us to what we call clean up the dialogue if there's lots of noise behind it, only to a certain degree, because the human voice has a wide range, and if any of the disturbing sounds are within that range of the human voice, we can't take it out because we would be ruining the quality of the voice of the actor. So that's when we have to bring them back into the studio and actually record replacement dialogue.
So we probably come to the end of this interview for this part.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to say? What's your most exciting moment? That you get, this I've done a great job, more than ever.
Actually, I don't have one defining moment. I've enjoyed my career throughout. At the time things were happening that were good, I probably didn't recognize it at the time till you actually live through it and reflect back on it. And it's been very rewarding, so I just can't say that this was my piece de resistance or something like that, because I enjoyed everything that I've done.